Don't you just hate how hypocritical Christians can be? I hear that all the time. And the truth is that Christians can be hypocrites at times, but I don't think it's just Christians who are hypocritical. As a matter of fact, I think it's a kind of a societal norm. It's an issue, it's a problem. And in this episode of All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About, Rob Byrd, Amanda Jones, and I talk about the fact that hypocrisy is just kind of a problem that needs to be dealt with. It's not just a Christian thing, it's an all of us thing. And so rather than focusing on who's at fault and who the hypocrites are, we're just going to look at the whole idea of hypocrisy and where it seems to seep in and the problems that it causes and what we might should think about doing about it. So anyway, I hope that this episode of All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About is an encouragement to you, and maybe some of the things that we talk about, some of the insights that we discuss might be helpful to you. Again, this is part of I'm putting it in the channel of the halftime podcasts. You may even be wondering, Mylan, where have the halftime podcasts been? We haven't seen one released recently. Well, part of the problem is I have a dying computer. Right now, it's very difficult for me to record and edit and do things like that. I am working on a solution right now. It's going to take a little bit of time. But once I am able to get a healthy computer again, I would love to return. I've got some guests that I would love to have on and some shows that I would love to shoot. So in the meantime, I will continue to put out these episodes that I am recording with Rob and Amanda. And I hope that this information, this content is helpful to you as well. God bless. Have a great day.
Welcome to All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About podcast. This podcast will explore all the subjects that make the insecure squirm in their seats. Religion, politics, local and national, the Constitution of the United States, and the wheel of love and hate, to just name a few. Stay with us as we use our freedom of speech to delve into the good and the bad. If this podcast is not for you, feel free to find another one. Without any further ado, here comes All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About podcast. Good day and welcome to another episode of All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About. And you can find this podcast or the website at tabootalkback.com, where we are exploring lots of different issues. We've been really kind of doing more right now of the religious and Bible and morality type of stuff with one of our wonderful guests. He's our religion contributor or our morality contributor. Maybe more should talk to Mylan Bittenbender. Good day to you.
Good morning, Rob.
And then Amanda Jones, our illustrious producer. Good day to you.
Good day.
Yes. Make sure you get that mic there a little closer to you. But all right. Well, what we're going to try to do here is we really didn't do any preparation for this podcast, and it's probably going to show.
We're going to let her rip.
We're going to let her rip.
See
but
what happens.
Just with having a small conversation with Mylan before we started, we were talking about all kinds of different things going on in the world, from the Olympics to LGBT issues. We talked just a second about what's going on with the world biblically, and just a whole bunch of stuff. And then I'm like, you know what? That sounds like a good subject. And the subject that popped into my head was hypocrisy. And where everybody is probably guilty of it a little. There are others that are guilty of it a whole lot. And we're going to talk a little bit about what hypocrisy is, who's doing it, and maybe being able to look at yourself sometimes and realize, ooh, I just did exactly what I said these people do, and I'm against them. Mm-hmm. So maybe we can find common ground in hypocrisy. And so I want to, as we have a little philosopher's session here, it's going to be about Christian hypocrisy and secular hypocrisy. So I guess from there is, why is hypocrisy been something that's so called out? Everybody can notice someone else's hypocrisy, but never seem to be able to notice their own.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where sin kind of entered the whole human race. What was it that Eve was tempted with? Your eyes will be opened, you will know good from evil, and you will be, quote unquote, like God. And I think to some degree we got a little bit of this God concept of our being, and all of a sudden we felt like we're judges. We can figure out what's right and wrong. The problem is that in our brokenness, I mean, it's always easier to see what they are doing wrong than it is to see what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just part of the human condition. It's so much easier to see someone else's fault than to see myself. And I think real maturity requires that we learn the skill of being able to see both.
Yeah, that's what I always I remember back in the day, in high school and college, where they would say, okay, you're going to self-evaluate yourself.
Yeah.
And then, well, this is an A paper. Well, the teacher goes, no, this is probably a D paper. People seem to have a lot of times such a self-inflated sense of self.
Sure. Yeah.
And like I said, what you just said is that they tend to be able to see everybody else's faults and not their own. Now, how do you go about digging into your own faults and being able to notice that, oh, I just said that this person is being mean or put some stuff up I didn't like, and they're making vile comments. That's where I see a lot of this happening in social media. But then they get mad about something someone else says, or that person, and turn around and do the exact same and are as vile and mean, if not even worse.
Yeah. I use the word skill because I do think it's a mental, emotional, it's a skill, a self-awareness that I don't think we do a good job of teaching people that. We don't teach our kids very well how to be, to really self-evaluate and to be critical. Now we have a tendency to put ourselves down about mistakes we make and things
absolutely.
like that.
We tend to be the hardest on ourselves than other people, but that's like either after getting caught with something or somebody actually says something to you and it hits a nerve.
Yeah. One of my favorite bumper stickers is "Don't believe everything you think," and I think we have this tendency to think that our thoughts are reality.
That. So don't share everything you think.
Well, that's the second part of it.
Right.
But the first part of it is realizing that just because I think something, even if I feel it in my gut, doesn't make it right.
Right.
And so we have a tendency to judge the rest of the world based on this mental view that we have of what is right and wrong, or what we believe, what we think, and not realizing that other people are different, and not in bad ways. We think different is some degree of wrong.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, to me, I've always, a little weirdness and a little strangeness is always kind of a good thing. Keeps people on their toes.
Sure. Well, it goes along with that whole diversity thing. Right now, DEI is a huge deal. We've turned it into, we judge other people, which is crazy because we say, no, this is what we're trying to avoid, but we judge other people on the color of their skin or where they came from or what, blah, 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 whatever. But really, diversity is about the wide variety of soul that we have as a people, right? Well, it goes to what we believe. It goes to our skills and our abilities, our talents, all of those kinds of things. This diversity, and rather than celebrating the beauty of diversity as if we're looking at this vast array of beautiful colors, we look at diversity. First of all, we try to judge it by what we can see with our physical eyes, right? And then we think any color that's not our color, not talking about skin color, but just the diversity of our personalities and who we are.
But that's what DEI is about. For them as skin color and sex on your gender.
Right.
Hold on a second. And when you talk about that, we talked a little bit about that on the radio show last Saturday, is when you use the word diversity, equity, and inclusion, to me, those three words mean nobody's left out. And within the definition of what it is, really the people that are left out are white men. And maybe I'm wrong with my analogy here, but I always go with, okay, half the world is men half the world is female. That's 50-50 right there. That's a whole group that's now not included. So they just separated us that way. Now you separate black men, you take it out of the men group, Asian men, Hispanic men, and it turns white men into about 30% of the population, which is now the minority within their own logic of DEI. We are the oppressed. White people are the ones that are oppressed now, and they are, with their own logic, that's how it turns out to be. We are now the minority. And I don't know if probably could be people out just screaming, you're stupid, you're wrong. But really, when it comes down to it, it's just another form of segregation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we talked on the radio show on Saturday, they said diversity hire, DEI, was to give the appearance of being inclusive. So we can't always just assume, oh, well, DEI's here. We're all safe and included now. It's not. It's just a word. It's really just a word. I understand that there's good things about it, I guess. But just looking at it, after I started looking at the definitions of this, it's like, this isn't what I thought this was at all. Like,
the concept of it is actually wonderful.
It's great.
The reality of it is not what it's supposed to be, I don't think.
Well, yeah, when they say, oh, it's to give the appearance of. Like,
yeah.
What? I want it to be, not to
if
give
we
an
make,
appearance
If we make
of.
any decisions based on skin color first or gender first, that isn't being fair to who that person is and their capabilities.
Yeah, well, what we try to do is we try to legislate morality because we feel like there's some kind of power in legislation, right? So we take a concept like DEI, diversity, beautiful idea.
Correct.
Something that we should embrace with our hearts, and we try to make rules and laws and regulate it. And as soon as we do that, the person that's making the rule and the law and regulating it all of a sudden creates all of the rules around how we're going to make that happen. And it blows up the whole thing. It destroys exactly what we were trying to create.
Yeah.
That's why we can't legislate morality. We actually have to clean up what's on the inside of our hearts. We have to quit judging each other, and we have to find ways to live peaceably together.
Yeah. And another thing I read this week too was about, not to judge people, that you got to work on yourself. And only worry about yourself, really. Like, obviously, worry about your family and your children, those things. But I can't be the morality piece for everybody else. I have to take care of myself. And not that you shouldn't spread the good word, but you need to be an example of it. And that's how you teach people, is by example, not by screaming it down their throats in the comment sections online.
Yeah, and sometimes we even come up with really nice sayings like, hate the sin and love the sinner.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a Christian comedian one time. I wish his name would come to my mind right now because I'd like to give him credit. But he kind of went into this monologue, and he said, sometimes as Christians, we try to make it all look good by saying, hate the sin, but love the sinner. He said, honestly, I've got enough of my own sin. I should probably just hate my own sin and love the sinner. But too many times, again, even if we hate the sin and love the sinner, all of our focus is on the other person. Right. And our judgment of that other person. Right. Whereas what we really need to do is we need to spend a whole lot more time humbly submitting ourselves before the standard of morality, God himself, and saying, God, I need your help. I'll let them worry about their own sin.
Right.
I need to worry about mine.
Right.
Right. And if God puts us through things for our own personal struggles and journeys, I think we should be concentrating on our own, not focusing on everybody else's.
Yeah.
But teach your children, obviously, but people are spending way too much time, like that they could be giving that energy and time making themselves better when they're trying to project it all into the world.
Worried about everybody else. That's almost the same thing when you look at it on a national scale, where here's the United States sending money all over the world to everybody else when we've got a lot of problems to take care of ourselves. And to me, the philosophy where if I'm going to be able to be good to people, if I'm going to be able to be more warm outwardly, then I have to make myself right. I have to love myself. And if you have heard, a lot of people hear that saying you can't love anybody else until you love yourself.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, really important, because those that don't love themselves, they're clinging to somebody else as almost, that turns into their identity.
Right.
And you lose
Right.
yourself within that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
Oh, that's a great illustration, Rob. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we're just going to end the show on that then.
Rob got props. We're going to hang it
We're
there.
going to leave with a mic drop and head out the door. But I mean, getting back to hypocrisy and being a hypocrite is you see a lot of people do that. I mean, let's go 10 Commandments. How many people, I can't believe this person's cheating on their wife, this and that, when a year later, now that person does it.
Yeah.
I mean, you say things and you attack, whether, I mean, social media attacks, but even just in conversation, you see, it's, you gossip and you're talking about, well, this person did that, this person did that. Well, why you're doing that too?
Yeah.
So why are you worried about them? Take care of yours. And then actually really kind of just mind your own business, stay out of it, unless it's a situation where what you're talking about is hurting someone you really care about.
Well, we do need to protect the meek, stuff like that. I feel it's important to have justice for those who can't defend and protect themselves.
That's what the strong are for. That's what we're here, is to protect the meek. But the problem is when the meek inherit the earth, all of the strong people that protected them, it almost seems like they want to just throw us to the wolves. Us that are maybe more alpha males that will, if I saw something happen to you on the street, I might run and help and stop. Where there are a lot of men, they won't want to do nothing about it. They won't even say anything. They'll look the other way. I couldn't stand there, even if it was anybody standing there on the sidewalk beating up a woman. I couldn't allow it.
Yeah. I wouldn't want you to.
Yeah. But there are people that would not ever help. They're scared of their shadows. Mm-hmm. And that's who people like me and people like Amanda, who, military people, that's who they went into the military to protect. But those people now kind of look back at us as we're toxic. We're bad. We're exactly what all the bad things about the earth are about. And when you look at men, the problem with that statement is in general, I mean, in a huge percentage general, I can't put a number on it. Let's say 95% of everything that has been made in this earth and created for our pleasure has been created by men.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important too, as we try to bring balance and see this whole big picture thing, to realize that all of these kinds of things seem to swing on a pendulum, right? Mm-hmm. We see weakness right now. I would say that we're seeing this upsurge of, the weak, the downtrodden, the people at the grassroots, the bottom of the pyramid, are trying to flip that pyramid and take power and control away from those who've worked hard all their lives and built the cities, built the companies, right, built the country, built all of this. And the people who've built things and the people who've, those individuals are, they're all the bad people right now, which is exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
But part of this whole diversity idea is realizing that having power, we have to value the role of people who don't have that alpha male personality and don't build and don't do all of those things. And by the same token, those who are on the other end of that don't value what it took to build all the things, what it took to build huge companies and build a society and build a country. And so, again, it's easy to see how who I am and what I have is more valuable and worth protecting and worth fighting for more than what the other side is, no matter what the other side is. To me, that's where hypocrisy really comes in. We don't value what the other side brings, and we don't come together. So part of hypocrisy is judgment and criticism, mm-hmm, right? But what about the other side of it? What about the ability to see the value in other people and compliment and lift them up,
sure, and
raise them up? That's another skill that we don't have. I would love for one of our politicians, right now we're in the presidential race. I would love for one of them to say, hey, you know what? Here's what we can recognize the other side has done in the past.
Yeah.
Whether it be 4 years ago, or whether it be in the last 4 years.
Inadvertently, that has happened, not vocally, and because as I've been looking with Kamala Harris, every policy that she's had 3-4 years ago now, she has flip-flopped on and has changed her stance. Fracking is okay. This, I don't want to take your guns. She's totally flip-flopped on that. So I have a tough time coming to terms with that, because it's like, I actually want to see some good in it from that side. I want to see, okay, you know what? I like that you changed, but did you change your views because it's an election year and an election is coming up in 4 months, 4 months, or did you change your views because you really have thought about it and you changed your views? I can't see the way that party has been going for the last 12 years to even see how could you make that big of a drastic change overnight.
Yeah, and that's the part that drives us crazy. But really, at the end of the day, that's where.
But people will believe it.
I know.
I would if I could actually believe that this was honest and that she really did feel that way, I could actually probably consider it. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's there when someone makes such a flip flop. When you look at the mainstream media. 3 weeks ago or whatever, when you looked at her polling numbers, she was considered the worst vice president ever to be in that office. And now all of a sudden in the media, even the mainstream media, were like, yeah, this is an issue. Now all of a sudden that she's been the one who is to be the next leader of the Democratic Party, all that stuff is forgotten. Now she's wonderful, and none of that stuff really happened. And we even talked about that on the radio show too a little bit. How I've seen the clips where they're talking, where she's saying, yeah, I'm the first Indian senator. And now she's the first black vice president. How does anybody change so drastically? And I have changed my opinions over the years and how I feel, but that happened over years. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah. It's hard to watch that stuff and not come to judgments. And at the end of the day, I think one of the things we have to be careful about, because I watch the news media, and man, they're just brutal.
Brutal.
Both directions.
Both sides.
Both directions. Right. And I just think that is not helping anybody.
It's not.
I think what we need to do is we need to watch what's happening, and then we need to vote.
Yeah.
Let's quit slinging the mud and let's just vote.
Either side of the media isn't the media that was 40 years ago.
No.
They all still had no matter what we do as humans, we're going to have our own slant to it, how we feel. Sure. But you could listen to Walter Cronkite, just about everybody, and you could believe that he's reporting as fair and honest as possible. And I don't get that from anybody anymore.
Well, partially because was it Walter Cronkite? Who was the reporter who made this huge apology on TV because he got something wrong? Nowadays,
was it?
let me say this too. On Saturday, for our last radio show, I said something wrong twice. I said that something about the Jamaican blacks, are they different than ones from Africa? And Mason's like, well, they are from Africa. And then Amanda looked it up. I was wrong. And then I said something even later about a song. We were talking, and I blanked on it. It was Katrina and the Waves was the name of the song, and said something else. This has haunted me now for days.
Yeah.
I lost sleep that I was wrong twice in my own show and got corrected. Now, with all that being said, I like that he was there and got corrected. Sure. So I wasn't actually putting out misinformation and saying stuff that wasn't true. I mean, because we got it right.
Well, and you're still confessing.
I am hurt by this.
Yeah.
That being wrong. Yeah. That I said something that was wrong.
Back to the Jamaica, are they really? I don't know, because that is something that comes up a lot, and people will be like, oh, well, they're from Jamaica. And then you're like, well, what does that mean? Yeah. So it actually was good for everybody, because I searched it up, and it's like, oh, no. Now I know, because obviously I knew, but you just hear all this talk on both sides. Yeah. And it's like people are, oh, well, you were a Jamaican slave, so you don't have any credit here.
I don't know why I had that brain fart, because I know all black people originated in Africa.
Sure.
Right. But I thought it was a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't look at it as, oh, look, we shamed you, Rob.
No, I didn't feel shamed. I just don't like being wrong.
You shamed yourself.
I shamed myself.
We're all ignorant in something, right?
Right. And I'm like,
Let's go back to your original.
No, hold on a second. I wasn't ignorant in it. It just was
Uh-oh.
I'm going to call that a brain fart.
Okay, we'll call it a brain fart. It's not saying you're ignorant.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're not
that.
the mainstream
you're
definition of
not
ignorant,
totally ignorant,
Rob. You're the
Thank you.
Webster's dictionary version.
All right. Well, I appreciate the clarification.
Boy, that was a trigger.
It happens.
So back to your original question that kind of opened this whole conversation. Why do we do this? Why are we? But I think the media gives us a pretty good understanding of why we do this. We're being taught by popular culture to respond this way.
Yeah.
And we see it in the media played over and over and over again. And man, it's on YouTube, it's on TV, it's in my feed, it's everywhere. We see these kinds of hypocritical things. And you can look at either the person, right? The newscaster or the guy who has the show or whatever. Most of the time you can even tell from whichever channel you're on, where they stand. And boy, they stand 100% there. They refuse to acknowledge the faults of their candidate. And they can only talk about the faults of the other candidate. And so we're being brainwashed, if you will,
right,
that this is how we do competition in life. And whether it be competition over a job, whether it be competition in the home between husband and wife, whether it be competition between people at school or cultures, subcultures, the LGBTQ community against quote unquote the world or whatever it is, we're being taught that this is how we handle it. That you refuse to look at your own faults, your own side, and you only criticize the faults in the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just breeds this hypocrisy.
Sure. It's certainly hard to look within because none of us want to think there's anything wrong with any of us. And not to say that there is any, that it's actually wrong about us. It's just things in our behaviors that we could do better.
Yeah.
And that's a slippery slope because what's the measure of that? What is better?
Right.
Better, is that just being more tolerant of people? Or maybe I'm better because I just go and live a life as an introvert. I mean, that's now you're not being mean to anybody, and you're doing what you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, you got to let me respond as a pastor.
Oh, please.
So the question: how do we know what's better or best or whatever? And I do think that one of the powerful things about the life of Christ in the Bible is that Jesus literally lived out a standard before us, so that we could see what is right. And man, I'll tell you that a lot of people will say, "Oh, geez, you're gonna go back to Jesus, whatever. He was just a guy like everybody else, blah blah blah, whatever positions everybody holds on that." But you can't argue. When you read the scriptures, you see somebody who responded in pretty profound ways, in ways that we just can't find a match in this life. And I think all of us are looking for somebody to believe in, something to believe in, a rock that we can stand on, something that's bigger than we are. And that's why I just continue to look to Jesus as my standard and my hope that that I can make progress toward the standard.
Do you think that maybe when you look at kind of what we're talking about, Christian hypocrisy and secular hypocrisy, so really what that is there's Christians and then everybody else is secular. Do you think it's worse that Christians would be hypocrites or than outside, secular people? And I'm going to say why. Yep. Or why I think maybe it is because why I think it might be a little worse is because in church, if you're a member of the church, you hear a lot about hypocrisy. It's a common theme in just about all messages within preaching and within the church. So isn't it a little worse that those that may be in the church and Christians are educated to it, yet do it anyways, where maybe the secular world just doesn't see it, they don't understand it because no one ever in their lives have ever talked to them about talking out of the other side of their face or backbiting or saying, I can't believe you did this, and turn around and go do the same thing yourself.
Yeah, no, you're definitely on something really, really important there. when a person says Christ is my standard and I've given my life to him and I'm going to live for him and ultimately I'm pursuing that standard, then yeah, to some degree we're saying. Now on the other end of that though, we've got to recognize that we still have a broken nature.
Right.
That does not get completely healed this side of heaven. So I will
We are flawed and always will be flawed.
Flawed and always will be. Where I think it gets really bad is when people kind of take on this self-righteousness and present themselves as, I'm a Christian, I'm better.
Yeah.
When really the only difference between a Christian and a non-Christian is that a Christian recognizes that I'm freaking messed up and I need a savior. I need a solution, and I'm humbly submitting myself to him. Does that make me respond and act better? I hope so, man. I hope that
that's the whole point
I'm growing
of Christianity.
But I'm still always flawed and always in that process of growing. And so for me to stand up and say, so now I'm better is, well, that's just showing you that you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I say that to all kinds of people where I've heard people and you're talking to whatever and they, well, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I'm like, well, a lot of times when people keep saying you're a good person or you're this, good people don't have to tell anybody they're good because we see it. You walk the walk. A kid I'd get to talk to every now and again, she says, I'm cool. And I say, well, you don't have to tell anybody you're cool.
Right.
Because if you're cool, we know you're cool. You don't have to tell me. I know you're cool.
The first rule of being cool is that you don't have to tell
anybody that you're cool. Just be cool.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of that same thing. But to me, it seems, we had talked about this on a previous podcast on how Sunday Christians are Sunday Christians is a different Christian than you see on Monday. And is it an act? That's the thing that to me that probably sours a lot of people from religion is, you go on Sunday, everybody's so warm and kind, and on Monday they won't even look at you if you see you.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes down to
that may be a little extreme.
No, yes, but we define things in the extremities. That's where we see the reality of the problem. But I think, it's kind of like the rule about being cool. The rule of being a Christian is if you have to tell people that I'm righteous and humble, you just screwed it up. You're not, right? Yeah. So I think, it's about being humble. And of course, if you're being humble, you're not standing in judgment. You're not condemning others. You're not throwing the mud with everybody else. You're simply stepping back and, Jesus describes it as being salt and light.
Yeah.
Those things they're just there. Light just shines. It doesn't. It's not a spotlight in your eyes. It's just a resonance of what is right and true and should be. And when we appear as light in the community, it's a good thing. When we try to tell everybody we're light, then we really screw it up.
Yeah. Well, humility, when you touched on that word, that is a tough one sometimes. And for me, let's just say, let's talk about my own humility. Sometimes I'm not.
Really?
So, yes. But the thing is, when you're in what I do, you kind of have to tell people what you do to sell yourself. I work for myself. If I don't tell people what I do and that I'm good at it, then they're not going to know. People aren't just looking at the videos that I have out there because it's just not, how I do it. It's not me trying to do a channel where we're doing something every week. I do business to business videos and documentary films for the most part.
Yeah.
And music videos if I ever get one. So if anybody's out there needs a music video, you can go to moondogpro.com. But for anything else, actually, too, I maybe throw that a pitch in there, which is always kind of nice. We probably should do commercials in these. Put a commercial for a man and put one in for you in the middle of these.
Do that.
But I'll think more about that. I always kind of like having the podcast. I'm kind of that. I like living that PBS life. That if you got an hour show, it starts right on 8:00 and it goes till 56:46. It's just straight. There's aren't the commercials in it.
Yeah. It's
You
nice.
know, so it's nice to have that, but at the same
Right.
time, you lose a chance at revenue.
Yeah.
So that's a fine line, but you know, but like I said, getting back to humility is some people is you see people that are withdrawn, and you know, and it might be a part of their personality. You get people on the spectrum. Are they humble because they don't talk much, or what makes somebody humble?
Well, I'm not going to speak as somebody who is an authority on this, but I think it's like so many things. It's more of an artistry of the soul, right? And what I mean by that is you can't say that when one person does this action, it's humble, but when another person does the same thing, it's not humble. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it's almost an artistry kind of a thing. Humility is really hard to define in terms or even activity. It's either you have this humility of the heart and you live out of that, or you don't. Right. So when you promote yourself, that doesn't mean you're not humble. You can be very humble and promote yourself very well. But how does that bump up against other people? How do other people feel? That's one of the things that I've been trying to work on myself is how do I make people feel? Because people aren't going to remember what you do near as much as they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to somebody else in pride or arrogance or something like that, it's an energy that they feel. They probably can't even put their finger on exactly what you did to make them feel that way.
Love, you know, love isn't how you make someone feel. It's about how they make you feel.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, and
right.
And it's the same concept through all of it.
Yeah. So, I think rather than trying to define it and again, legislate it, well, this activity is humility and this one is not, I think we have to look at it and we have to just be aware of it and say, am I being humble toward other people?
Yeah.
How do I present myself to other people or treat other people? And how do they feel in my presence? And that's not something we're always real comfortable with, but I think it's something that's important for us to do.
Yeah. And when we talk about humility, I start thinking about politicians. Is there such thing as a humble politician?
Boy, one of the things I'm wondering is if you can even get to the highest levels of politics with certain characteristics or certain virtues.
Yeah.
Because they seem almost absent at those levels. And it's made me wonder, what is the sorting process? When I hear this all the time about the candidates that we have, and not just this term, but in pretty much every election in the last, I don't know, however many years, it's always been, how in the world is this the best we have to offer? Mm-hmm. So my question is, what is the cultural selection process? And I'm not talking about the people who vote for them or the events we have or the whatever, but culturally, what is the process? What is the brokenness in our culture that is creating a selection process that brings these people to the absolute top?
Because typically what I think is what rises them to the top is how they look, how they speak, and then maybe possibly down there third or fourth is their policies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think there's
it's a lot politics, especially starting politics. It's a popularity contest. Who's more popular? I got the votes. And a lot of times you'll see people with, these are great ideas. This is all stuff, but maybe they don't look as good as this person, but this other person talks better. RFK, he's kind of one. Do I think could be presidential? Yeah, but his voice is hard to listen to for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is so superficial from my end, but that doesn't mean it's not true.
Right.
That doesn't mean that, I'm not the only person that have said that. I've heard that from a lot of people say, all right, he's still a bit progressive, but he's a little more in the middle than a lot of the other folks in the party. And that's really what we need to find more is people that are in that middle. You see some validity with some of the other side. You see it. But, it just seems to me today that it's just total blinders. We can't see any good that you do. Yeah. And everything we do is great. You can't see anything good that we do. And you think everything you do is great.
There's part of it, and that's an easier game to play, right? Because all you have to do is your messaging and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, and if you can buy certain factions of media, then boom, you've already got it. And you can create any image you want to create, blah, blah, blah. What I feel like we've lost touch with is what true leadership is. And at the end of the day, a huge problem in our culture is that we want what we want. And I'm going to vote for whoever can give me what I want.
Right.
That's not leadership. That's an enablement, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like, an alcoholic only putting people in his life that are going to make sure he gets more alcohol.
Well, and that's usually kind of how that works. We surround ourselves with like-minded and people that like to do the same things we do.
And that's never going to change until you find a leader that can challenge you, a leader that knows the way and will take you in a different direction. And I think by and large, our culture, our society doesn't look for leaders. We look for enablers. We look for people that can continue to give us everything that we want, that meets our appetites and desires and wishful thinking. And so we vote these people in and they give us everything we want. And we wonder why in the world everything is going in the toilet.
Yeah.
And everyone's still not happy.
Dang.
Yeah, we're not getting any happier,
They're not
are we?
happier. They just keep saying it's worse than it's ever been.
I'm a little more on fire over it, but as a whole, I think I'm a bit more happy.
You're just a happy guy, right?
No, you don't say that kind of thing. We don't want to give anybody any false notions out there. So when we getting back a little bit to, hypocrisy, secular Christian, how does one go about noticing that you're being a hypocrite? Because nobody wants to look at themselves. So how do you know it?
Yeah, self-awareness. Again, it's a skill that you have to desire, you have to want. Nobody wants that, right? That's hard work. It can be a pain in the butt. It can all of a sudden create more problems I got to try to fix and solve. And the hardest place to solve problems is in ourselves because we know how broken we are.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I know I'm a broken person. There's stuff in me that just doesn't work right. And so I don't like to look at it. But the only hope I have for working on that and becoming a better person is to do that. Now, does that mean I'm going to be able to solve all my problems? And again, that's probably one of the things we don't want to face.
Yeah.
Probably not. There are going to be certain propensities I'll never gain mastery over. And that can produce a lot of humility in us.
Sure.
Because it can help us to realize I'm broken. But you know what? That person over there that's doing stuff that really ticks me off, they're broken too. And they probably don't want to be broken in the ways that they are, but they are, So compassion comes out of that awareness of the brokenness in myself and the brokenness in other people. And man, the fact that we're on it, we're in a battle trying to address the issues of the world. And
exactly. We're all on the same
issues.
quest going through life till from the time we're born to the time we're put in a casket. For most people, it's a quest of doing, trying to do things and leave a mark. And there are people that have no drive to do that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and one of the other points I would make, you're talking about, we try to do better with the things we don't do well. Now, when you're trying to fix some of the things you don't do well, don't forget the things that you do.
Sure.
Because you can continue to make those things better also.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, people will a lot of times, I've done this, now I'm going to focus on here and totally forget about it. Don't forget about those things. Don't leave them. I think I've heard it a million times. If you don't use the gifts that God gave you, you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah, your talents and all those things. Got to work on them.
Yeah. And I think that's the same as the personality and the emotions and everything else that he gave you into, out of the physical world. These are all things that we can continue to do better. There's church, and that's an obvious answer with this, but where are some other places where people, and I don't even know if it's for therapists because I'm not sold on that profession. Where do other places people go to be able to work on some of the stuff that's not a church?
The scriptures. And that's one of the huge problems we have. You early on in this conversation, a few episodes ago, you talked about the decline. Well, I really believe that a huge part of the decline that we're experiencing in morality and faithfulness and Christian religion, especially, and things like that, is that we do not know the scriptures. We're illiterate when it comes to that. And the scriptures, as they're described for us, are more than just words. It's not text that's supposed to be read like a textbook. There's power. I really believe there's power in the Word of God, and there's things that happen when we allow the Word of God to impact our soul. Too oftentimes, I think we go to church. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to church, but what I'm saying is, if you put church between you and God as the place that I'm going to go to get fixed, or to be enlightened, or to feel better about myself, or to learn or grow or whatever, then we're getting that recording of the recording. And I think too oftentimes people rely on that because it's 1 hour a week. I can go check the box, do my thing, and man, it's supposed to be getting better, but what the heck is going on? No, I really believe that the Word of God is there to be God's letter, His love letter to us, and through that, for God's Spirit to literally work on the issues of our soul.
Hard work. I mean,
Yeah.
Self-reflection is hard.
It's not very entertaining.
It's
unfortunately.
painful. It's painful
yeah.
for people.
Not in my
It
brain.
is.
It's pretty entertaining. I got the merry-go-round doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, spinning around.
Well, we're a very, very, very entertainment-driven society, and if something doesn't entertain me, and by that I mean it doesn't bring enjoyment through experience, then we write it off.
I see that. I mean, and that starts early. You see so many people with their children, and they feel they've got to keep them entertained 24/7. They've got to have them. They got to do this. They got to be doing that, and not teaching where a child can just sit down and just sit for a little while, maybe think a little bit. You have to be occupied in that brain 24/7, or you're bored and life doesn't seem right.
We got to keep getting those dopamine hits.
Being bored is such a good thing, though. You'll find something to not be bored with.
And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to sit in silence sometimes, but if you do it, you might just hear some things you never would have heard before.
Well, I think boredom is an estrangement of our soul, right? Because when we're alone, if we're bored, that means we don't know how to even communicate with our own soul. We don't know how to perceive things that are outside of, again, that concrete entertainment that produces the dopamine hit and all of that. And I think for a lot of people, they've ignored the voice of their soul so long, they have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
Let alone who everybody else is.
I tell my kids all the time, everything that you're doing on these screens, the TV, that's junk food for your brain.
Yeah.
And to look
absolutely.
at it that way.
Yep.
Because all that information, all those shows, those videos, the doom scrolling, it's going straight in your brain. Even if you're just flipping through it really quickly, you're not watching it, you're seeing it. The clips still.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're going to let them be on it, at least make a History Channel and National Geographic and learn something about the animals.
Make it productive, right?
May at least be learning something, Thumbs shooting the video game and shooting your opponents. I mean, that... I never want to be one that will blame video games for behavior. But what I will say is that I have played some video games in my life where I've played them so much I'm dreaming about them. And when that happens and you're dreaming and it pervades every second of your life, and all you can think of is when you wake up in the morning after dreaming about it all night, is getting back onto your game console and playing more. I mean, weekends gone, weeks gone.
Yeah.
Where was I? In a room.
Life gone.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's entertainment. We're here to work. We're supposed to be working. And we have this convenience life now where, what are you going to do with your free time? Oh, I guess I'll play video games. Oh, I guess I'll play on the internet.
Yeah.
Instead of, I'm going to have a garden. I'm going to go take my kids and the dog for a walk. Or there's lots of things you can do besides just being on a screen.
And again, back to that whole idea that life is not quote unquote happier. Most people would not say I'm happier today than I was.
Mhm.
And we live in this society that is we have entertainment at our fingertips every second, and we can entertain ourselves. And as a health coach, I love that statement that you made. I've never heard it before, but all of that entertainment is junk food for the soul.
Mhm.
And so, we know what happens to the physical body when you fill it with junk food. And the same thing happens to our soul. And I think a lot of people are anemic. They're out of shape. They're weak in their soul.
Yeah.
Because we've spent all this time just simply throwing entertainment at our thoughts.
So that is another subject for a different day. And I would say strengthening the soul. How do you do it? I think we can talk about it some other time. This feels like a pretty natural place to end. I don't know if you have any final last words on hypocrisy.
I kind of do.
Well, then please.
John chapter 8, it's right after Jesus was done doing a sermon, and they brought an adulterous woman towards him.
Yeah.
And they're saying, Lord, what should we do? We want to stone her to death. And he said, he without sin cast the first stone. And then they all slowly trickled away and all of that. But the one verse basically... And then when this is John chapter 8, verse 10, when Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Then spake Jesus again, saying unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. And so I figured in my head, as we were just talking the whole thing, I had that up. I'm like, it's the example right there.
Absolutely.
When everyone's online saying, you're doing this and you're doing that. Well, he without sin cast the first stone. And then you self-reflect and you think, hey, I've either been there or I could be in this same position. Yep. Let me just calm down and walk away. And, that's just the perfect example right there, I think.
Jesus himself didn't even feel the need. And if anybody was righteous enough to cast judgment and condemn, it was him. He didn't even condemn the people that were ready to stone her. He just made a statement.
He had the patience. He had all the 7 virtues. Like he
never condemned the people that were going
to
to crucify him.
Right?
No.
Father, forgive them, for they just don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah. So, do you have a last word on hypocrisy? Don't do it.
Try not to be it.
Try not to do it. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about, it's hard to look within and to see what we're saying. But, I see it every day with people saying, you're doing this, you're doing that. And they're turning around and doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
As Andy Stanley would say, it's not a problem to solve. It's a tension to manage. It's something that will always be there. And it's something we just have to be aware of and have to continue to work on.
Sure.
Yeah.
While we still have our listeners, halftime with Mylan Bittenbender. How's that going?
Yeah, I've got, I actually, speaking of politics and everything else, I had an episode with Miranda Cruz just recently. I hope people will go and listen to it. It's a fantastic, very balanced approach to how to handle the chaos of the political scene that we find ourselves thrust into.
I think I listened to that one and I felt it did give me a lot of peace, especially with a lot of both sides saying the other's evil.
Yeah.
Then all these things, and just listening to Miranda and her take on it, I think I'm going to approach things a little differently now.
Yeah. It brings me back a little bit to the Joe Verdi sales system. And one of the things, the biggest thing when I listened to that at one point, didn't certainly listen to all of it, but one thing that I did pick up in that mostly was that if you want to live a happy life, quit watching the news. It is, and it's the same thing, and I feel the same way about social media, and I talk to Amanda about this all the time, and I say, post to stuff, but don't engage.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what they're going to say. Post something, put your comment out there, but don't engage, because now you're engaging with them. You're arguing with someone who's behind a computer who will never see probably any logic to anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's also a good... You have to always project yourself with the truth and grace for others when you're commenting online, and understand these are just either confused people I know I've been in the position with a lot of these people with misinformation and believing the mainstream media, no matter what they said. Well, it was on CBS Mornings. I believe Gail and Tony at the time. Like, you just have to step back. You have to step back and look at it all. And when you're engaging with people online, you don't need to defend God. He can defend himself. And we need to, we can defend ourselves and we can defend our fellow man. I think it's a good thing to stick up for, I don't want to say the weak, but there are people that I won't allow other people to bully online if they were to post their opinions or views. And I try to always have truth and the humility and grace and all that, no name calling, this and that. And you have to walk away sometimes.
That's what I tell her. Number one, online, if you're going to engage with that kind of discussion, just number one, be true to yourself.
Yeah.
That's it. Be true to yourself, and all else will take care of itself. Then not everybody's going to like you being true to yourself, but be true to who you are.
Well, and I think we have to be more discerning on which battles are worth fighting.
Sure.
And also recognize that there are different ways we can respond. We've got to choose the more productive ones. It's easy to, throw a word salad out there really quickly or slam somebody else. It's much more difficult, but more productive to use your time and energy bringing light rather than casting more darkness.
I had a guy accuse me of that, arguing with people online. I said, go check every post, any post I've ever made, go find anything I've ever commented on, and you will not find me arguing with people. If you can, please screenshot that and send it to me, because it's just not something I do, and I never heard a word back. But
there you go.
Where would somebody find Halftime with Milo and Bittenbender?
Just search for that. I'm on Apple and Spotify podcasts, also on YouTube. Halftime with Mylan Bittenbender.
Okay. You can find them on Google. Just Halftime with Mylan Bittenbender on Google. I tried that and it comes right up. At least if you're at least you're not Donald Trump. Just say because if you put his name in Kamala Harris's picture comes up now. Google is on the suppression. And they're on it already. So, all right. With all that being said, this has been a great podcast. Just being able to kind of free flow. We figured out a subject and just talked about it, and not necessarily in apples and oranges and facts, but more about how we feel and the philosophy of it. So, this is all the things they don't want you to talk about. You can go to the website to find out more at tabootalkback.com. Until next time, I'm Rob Byrd, Amanda Jones, Mylan Bittenbender. We'll see you next time. All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About podcast is part of the Rob Byrd Moondog Podcast Network. Go to tabootalkback.com for more information. Copyright 2024.